Good evening. Welcome to Investigator News, and I'm your host, Ellie Holder, and my co host, William. And we're doing a show today. Boy, we got a lot of really interesting news. Um, so, first off, I'm going to drop William because I want to get, not drop him out. Well, I'm going to put you away for a little bit, William. Uh, I'll bring you back, though. Um,
I'd be behind Miss Davis anytime.
um, So, what I want is to show you a warning that they have out of Texas about this solar eclipse that's coming up. They seem to think it's now dangerous. So, they are sending out warnings not only from the Weather Channel, the news channels, and they want everyone to know. And it's especially for Texas. And then we got snow. Snow. We don't want no snow, though, huh? So, and we'll bring William back. And um, so, is everybody watching anything on this 400 stupid 480 million billion trillion whatever they want to get out of Trump? Um, and so,
Half a billion.
yeah. Um, but there has been so many other people that's went um, through not only New York courts but across the country. And one of I went and I pulled a whole bunch of the big ones. Tim Tyson's plead guilty in the Indiana State Court for dealing in a controlled substance conspiracy to commit theft at the time. Tim arrest, the police seized a Land Rover that he had purchased from an insurance policy, and his father died. And well, make it long story short, they only hit him up, and this was a not only transporting cocaine, but a vehicle that was basically ended up stolen. Not only that, but he was in transportation of heroin. Now, I tried to see if um, he was part of the Tyson family, and it seemed to lead that way. And the Tysons, if you know, in the past, they even got caught for putting cocaine from Mena, Arkansas, and transporting it all, from here to L.A. and through Chicago and to New York, and they got caught up. And he got hit hard, but since who he was, they kind of overlooked it. So that's a case that would be before, a Supreme Court, kind of equal to Trump's. Um, Now, the reason a lot of this happens is under the Eighth Amendment, folks, of the federal Constitution in the Bill of Rights. It doesn't apply to the state penalty, and what it does is the amendment. We've never talked about the Eighth more than we are now. Why? Because um, it is basically Trump can use this. Now, I know his lawyers have looked all into this. They're probably throwing it out there. We're not hearing what the lawyers have to say, but I'm pretty sure what's happened in New York against Donald Trump is clearly a violation of the Eighth Amendment. And it's very important to say the excessive bail shall not be required or fines imposed should they be cruel, unusual punishment inflicted to um, uh, impose excessive fines that would have anything to do with the state or anything that has to do with um, Oh boy, I'm trying to. I wrote notes off of it, not wrote the amendment. So basically, what it said, you can't put someone in the poorhouse. You can't bankrupt them on the Eighth Amendment, no matter what the crime is. You can't be cruel and unusual punishment. So I know you guys have heard the Eighth Amendment before, and I really do believe that this is. They're trying to bankrupt him. And not only that, they never had anybody testify against him. Um, and the other thing is incorporated protection for the states under the 14th Amendment, which applies to the states through due process under the 14th Amendment is called incorporation document. That's why the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, virtually all the other amendments are applied to the states because on their face, they don't apply to the states to the Supreme Court. So a judge, um, let's see if I can explain this for you because I know it's real confusing when you read it. So those the State Bill of Right protections, quote, fundamental to our scheme of ordered liberty are deeply rooted in the nation's history and traditions from the court, which the rights protections in the federal and the state conduct, it prohibits and requires a prohibition embodied in excessive fines. Okay, I had to read that whole thing to you because it has to do with excessive fine clause that carries forward protections and sources from the Magna Carta. So, what this protection is now, it's over 800 years old, folks. And what it does is it keeps people from using, okay, a good reason is fine. Okay, it undermines other liberties that could be used. For example, to retaliate against a chill or speech or your political enemies. You see where that comes from? Oh boy. That's under the
It just
14th
means they
Amendment.
can't put you on the rack for speaking against the king.
Bingo. Bingo. This is 800 years old. So not only the Eighth Amendment says you can't be hit them up with such big fines to try to bankrupt them, but then the 14th says you can't, like I said, you can't undermine the liberties that can be used, for example, to retaliate against their chill of their the spill of their speech or political enemies. So what they're doing, and they know this, and
Cruel and unusual punishment was also what they used as an argument against the death penalty. So we've argued this a little bit in the past, but not towards civil fines.
yeah, and liberties are affected, and other liberties are affected when, like you said, the king, when a tyrant, when the dictator, when a state or federal government treats citizens this way, and it's absolutely no legitimate basis of any kind to go after them under political purposes. So, it, um, this legally was done here to take the property from Donald Trump and try to bankrupt him. And it also has a clause in there that says you can't seize assets from your political enemies. So I like that. You guys, what I like about that's why I like, I'm all, yeah, yeah. Try that again, huh, William? Maybe I got too excited about the show. Um, you can't, this is communist, they say. A blind eye is, when they get the money, they turn a blind eye. And the courts have done this. And why? Because of what I said. We should not have judges that are political. They should be equal in justice. That's why we have the scales. Um, Now, the other thing,
Blind justice.
huh?
Not only justice, but blind justice. I mean, you can't
That's
take
it.
favor.
Why do you think we have the Lady of Justice? And it's the Constitution. It's our amendments. It's our Constitution that was written by our forefathers a long time ago. Why do you think the Democrats don't like our forefathers? Because they hate the Constitution. The Democrats want nothing to do with it because that's what's going to hang them. And more, I'm hoping, I can't just, hey, Trump lawyers, use this. But you know who else mentioned all this was Mark Levin. And I was surprised because I found it. I was like, I got to bring this up. And then Mark Levin on his show over the weekend, he brought the same thing up. So, but there's many, many cases where it's went to the Supreme Courts in Indiana, Chicago, and New York. I mean, look at the Tyson case. That they were transporting truckloads, and they even said even heroin. And then he finally got caught in an SUV, but this would be the second time that family has been caught transporting um, illegal substances. I guess they just can't quit. But they say the cocaine and the drugs and probably fentanyl is still landing in Arkansas. Uh, Secret landing uh, airports. They get these
Yeah,
little
it's still
ones.
coming out of the Iron Triangle from like the Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia area, um, through and around Europe and coming onto our east coast.
Yeah.
Then it ends up all over the country.
Yeah. Well, I thought we had a little airstrip here in Conway. I was waiting. I was waiting for it. No, they just mowed it all down and put a shopping mall there. So, all right. So I'm going to move on to a new upcoming book, and I don't usually like to do books, but this one I think everyone might be interested in. If you don't read, you can always find it on. This is how I do a lot of books, is YouTube, and it has someone read the books to you. So while I'm working and doing stuff, I listen to this guy read books to me, and I get a lot of info from it. But now, Peter Schweitzer, boy, folks, I like this guy. He's powerful, and his new book is about the money and powerful turns. Here we go with the blind eye while China kills Americas. Is this stunning? Well, no. Well, the thing about it, it's not just about um, our politicians turning a blind eye to the fentanyl, this administration. It's Mexico. And why are they doing it? Because it's coming from China. And he's not only that, but we in fact have a president and a family that has been reported to basically has taken tens and thousands or millions of dollars from the government, which I think is one of the reasons why we don't stand up to China, the CCP or Jinping. Uh, uh, the big one with the fentanyl is uh, China's foot soldiers. Have you heard about that yet, William? The foot soldiers in America, um, that's
Well, we've
pushing the
had the
fentanyl
police stations
crisis.
here.
Yeah, well, this
We've already had.
is what they're calling. He called foot soldiers. That some of them even come in fatigues, and it's a group of them. And yeah, they'll have their wives or kids with them, only as a cover. And
The Chinese army, for a period of time, had been training with our fine friends up north in Canada, and until we caught them running around, and then that came to an end. So I'm not surprised they're here.
yeah, and now what it's linked to is um, it's coming into the port of Manzano in Mexico. It's run by the Chinese. And then California's kind of doing the same thing because they're putting a person on the board, uh, city council. I don't know if you heard about this over the weekend, but they are putting a woman on their city council in San Francisco that isn't even a citizen, and she's from China.
She's a Chinese national tied to the Chinese Communist Party.
Yep. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, she was a student that came here and overstayed her visa.
Yeah, okay. So back to what I was telling you about this port. So and in Mexico, and it's run by the Chinese, and they send those precursors up to a small border town where 2,000 Chinese national help them turn it into fentanyl. So um, they China has a port in Manzano, and what they do
So,
is from the port, they send it to the city, the small border town, where 2,000, and they said, and more, they're going to build more complexes to be able to make, turn all this uh, ingredients into fentanyl. And they take drill presses that are imported from China, and they sold it to the drug cartels at the cost by the Chinese that will help make these little pills. Um, so I really don't want to get so far into it, but not only that, but then they launder them through the Chinese banks. So fentanyl crisis completely one that is delivered from China, and the problem is our political leaders, just like Joe Biden and Gavin Newsom and Adam Schiff, they all have ties and entanglements to some of the networks that are involved in this money laundering. I don't know. Did you guys know about Adam Schiff? Is it that what legal this what they're doing with the ports? If Mexico allows it, then it's legal. And now we hear, um, for example, um, uh, if we look at Joe Biden, um, um, there's a Chinese kind of like gangster that set up the uh, Kaloa cartel with fentanyl and made them kings of fentanyl. And the guy named uh, Zhang and Lo, and he goes by the name White Wolf. And he has a business partner that's given the Biden family $5 to $10 million. So does Joe Biden really want to have a conversation about Chinese involvement with the fentanyl crisis? Not only that, so if you start the Chinese and and fentanyl, and it's not just that, it's also you got to mention Adam Schiff and Newsom and a little bit of their links to the same thing. They have been also given millions of dollars. So Adam Schiff is huge on this. Oh, where's his district? Southern California, just outside LA. And then who's in LA? None other than Maxine Waters. I think, yeah, she's still there. So Lee Jackson in Texas lost her seat. But yeah, look at who we got. So, and the Newsom is went over and had a meeting with Jinping. Now we've heard this is all from Peter Schweizer from this book, folks. So this is where I got the info. If anybody wants to know, it's called Blood Money by Peter Schweizer. It comes out, I believe, next Tuesday, but the book is already on sale. Um, so we have uh, our politicians. But not only that, if we even go back to Gavin Newsom in his day as mayor, had been neck deep in relationship with China and organized crime networks I mean, when was he mayor? Way back, way back. Even at the time of Camilla Harris being there. Hmm. And so a lot of it, now they say a lot of it was being smuggled in and through Chinatown in San Francisco. Now I can believe that. We knew there was a Chinese organized crime syndicate and drug trade that was going on in Chinatown. Um, and what the first time it was brought out, William, was from that show, The Streets of San Francisco. Remember Carl Malden? It brought out about this Chinese um, crime syndicate out of Chinatown. And then they start looking and they find out it was real.
They're called
So,
the tongs.
so, um, uh, so um, now from this country, and uh, in Mexico, and then dealing with China as a country and the CCP. Well, when they started looking into it, they found out that um, a company owned by the Chinese called A1 IAD, um, and it has a lot of executives to it, a lot of executives on the board. And one of them happens to be Adam Schiff. And his company that he's a part of, they've sent him hundreds and thousands to his campaign to hide this money. So what you're seeing with like James Biden, I like that. I don't remember that. I guess he's senile like his brother. All the money that's coming out with this business, then they put it through somewhere else, another business, to where they can collect it, and then they get on the
Yeah,
board.
they got a bunch of I don't know what you call them, secret businesses without any function except for to launder money.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the way. That's why China, they say has so much money, but then they say, oh, they're going broke. No, because you got to look at the businesses behind the scenes. When you start doing that, you start seeing that. How do you think Cyprus made it for so long?
So uh, Biden's received, um, Hunter's received cars, he's
Hmm.
received diamonds. You know, and any time
Did you hear about the diamond that was
somebody
sent?
received gifts from,
This is Schweitzer put it in his book. Their granddaughter, that's a little tiny thing, okay, got a 3.1 carat diamond from the CCP in China, one of the communist companies sent it to her.
yeah, and you can't take those without registering with the government. If your family is involved, you know, in the presidency, that has to go to the government. It can't be kept by the family.
Yeah, one of the I think one of the other little kids, because they've got them, baby size to, teenagers and probably older, but it's the little ones that are getting this stuff. One of their grandsons received a gold bar from the CCP from one of those companies that make military equipment. Oh,
You
I
know,
wish
and this isn't
my
just the
grandpa would have
United
bought me
States.
ice creams, William.
It's
And
not
it
just the
wasn't from
United States.
China. The popsicle stick may have been made in China, but I only got ice creams. I didn't get gold bars, or if it was a gold bar, it was called gold bar ice cream or something. So, um,
Well, we have our meat here in the United States, slaughtered here in the United States. They go into refrigerated containers. They go all the way to China where they're processed and they're sent back to the United States. And we have other businesses like down in Mexico. The government's touting this brand new factory with thousands of people. They're building Honda motorcycles. Well, that's great, except for all the parts are made in China. So it was a deal made between Japan and China to manufacture motorcycles, but China exported the manufacturing to Mexico. I don't know if they told Japan whether that happened or not. Then they import them back across the Pacific, and they sell them in Indonesia. They sell them in uh, the Philippines, Singapore, all these smaller countries, and it's they use that as a way of leverage to be able to get other things, you know, over here and buy off the presidency of Mexico as well.
mhm.
And then, like the fentanyl, all those precursors that are coming up, you know, they have in the past been just mixing this stuff in 55-gallon barrels over a fire. It's the dirtiest process you've ever seen. It's worse than cocaine.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I want to kind of move along. And we still have, uh, if you want to know kind of China and Taiwan, well, they're back to ramming their boats and ships, but it's a lot of the fishing boats. They're trying to capsize their fishing boats that are out in the waters, and just Taiwan's, of course. Now, satellite image um, of a hotly disputed Scarborough Shoal in South China Sea, a new floating barrier. Now, they make islands. Okay, well, there's a floating barrier across its entrance where Philippine ships and China Coast Guard vessels have frequent run ins. And one of the images taken on February 22nd, it was viewed by Reuters, and it showed the barrier blocking the mouth of the shoal, where the Chinese Coast Guard last week claimed to have driven off a Philippine vessel, illegally intruding into Beijing waters. But actually, this shoal is, let's see, um, me and William talked about this. Now,
So it's in the Philippines economic zone. That's the waters beyond the 12-mile exclusionary zone that goes out 200 miles. And they're trying to bar the Philippines from being able to use their own fishing waters. And the Philippines has condemned it, and they've gone out and removed those barriers. But we just found out. When did this happen? This was February what?
22nd when they got actual pictures. And now back, let's see, I don't know, it went back further. June 2020, I believe, is when they first were starting to bring this out. And but it's flaring up stuff over fishing rights. But look at what China did to Australia. They did the same thing when the Australian fishermen had went out into the waters. They would surround them and take their, basically board their ships, take the fish, and then chase them off, and then they would take over. But they were destroying the barrier reefs down there, and so the UN put a big halt to that. But they're still doing that. So
the Great Barrier Reef is the most pristine fishery in the world.
Yeah. Karen got a new 4 Patriots hand charger that she thought was made in the U.S., but it wasn't. Was it made in China? Remember, we used to think everything made in China was cheap. Now everything's made in China. Everything we under the free trade agreement, we just pushed all of our manufacturing. Because I got a friend from my game. They used to make jerseys for all the teams, and China about shut them down. They shut almost to where they're barely making it because they took over the market and undercut the prices. But they hand sew the stuff on there. It's not just something that's being manufactured. They sew these together with TLC. So, um, so what this has done is it's blocking for their Coast Guard. William, I read this and I meant to bring this up before when we were talking about it. To me, it's another block for this war that whole Taiwan Strait. I think that they did this, even though it was a long time ago, 2022. China has been building islands out there now, and someone else does it, and they start wanting to chase them off of being able to use it.
Well, Philippines wasn't building them. All they were doing was inhabiting islands that already exist. The Philippines has hundreds of islands in its chain.
Yeah,
it's not like a continental country.
It's all over. It's very pretty. If you look at it from GPS, they've got lots of islands right there. So,
yeah, and it's so well. I guess we could go on.
um, first I'm gonna see if I still have it. Um, you
I'm
guys,
sorry. The Philippines, they have places like Dogamente, and
yeah,
that's like they have like Greek Mediterranean architecture there.
yeah,
Then they have another place called Maui Mari, and the Spanish priests didn't make it there, and they're Islamic, but it's like Venice. All the people live actually on the water almost, and you do your business by boat into the town, and all the goods come into the town by boat to the stores. There's a couple sidewalks on each side of the canal. So the Philippines is really, really diverse in its character. And so some places you have small islands that are like the Bikini Atolls, and then other islands you could have 3 active volcanoes on the same island. It's really diverse.
mm-hmm. Now, really quick, if I would have had one of my other shows, I would have put it on there. People may know this guy. I almost forgot it. It was sitting on my paperwork. Kenneth Mitchell, Star Trek Discovery, and he was Captain Marvel. He died at the age of 49 yesterday, I believe. So those that watch Star Trek or Captain Marvel, he
I guess
passed
I don't
away.
want to be marvelous, do I?
Ah, but I thought I'd bring that up. I didn't. I was like, I can't remember who Captain Marvel was. I couldn't until I seen his face, and I was like, oh yeah, I know who he is. And they used him in Star Trek too. So the Star Trek movies. So all right, RNC Chair Rona Daniels. Now William, when they put her in there, I was like, no, that's not a good spot for her. She was, I mean, gung ho, but that wasn't the right job for her. I don't think. I think she should have just got into Congress and stayed there. You know, something.
So the RNC has been a problem for a period of time, and I've actually got something written here if I can find it quickly enough. Um, so she's not leaving until the 8th, and there's like a camp they have, so she can make a special speech there at that camp. And then, so she was going to leave during the right after the South Carolina primary, but now it's until they have this training camp. And then we have another guy that's very upset, Henry Barber. He's a longtime National Committee member on the Republican National Committee from Mississippi, and he's trying to get a bill, I guess, or law or resolution passed to make it so that there can't be coordination with Trump and the RNC over finances or the direction of the RNC. So there's really a fight going on within the RNC, and we would have never known about this if Trump hadn't tried to push McDaniels out. And she's part of the a group of senators and people. Her family's tied all the way back to the monarchy in England's family, okay? And they just see themselves as kind of aristocrats, and they have to be treated special. This all comes before the needs of the American people. It's just what we're seeing out of the Senate Minority Leader right now. He completely forgets the United States, and his wife, was it Cindy or Kathy Chung? She used to
Mm-hmm.
be Secretary of Transportation, I think. Anyway, it's, it's just sad that the RNC has completely lost touch with the average person. Now they're big on the GOP, right? They want to control all the GOP's finances for running for office, but they don't want to get behind the GOP leader.
Yep, that's it. Yeah,
They
so
want to
they
maintain.
need to get someone in there. I was hoping they would put um, Laura Trump in there, but it doesn't
The
look like it.
GOP can't win the Senate and the House without Trump and the RNC together. The RNC simply doesn't care.
Yeah.
The RNC would be happy enough just handing the Senate and House over to the Democrats as soon as Trump becomes president.
Yeah. So now, there was a reporter. His name was, let's see, I got to find it on my paperwork. Uh, Ward Clark, William. And he was going through, where they're holding some of these criminals. And it's not in our main jails. They're holding them. It's not even the FEMA camps. It's kind of a lockup system. And so he started talking to them about um, what they expect because and I did it because I was trying to find out. They come to the border. They say, "Oh, I know somebody here. I know somebody in Chicago," and then you go to where these people are at and you track them down. That's what this guy did. You find them just sitting there laying down on the sidewalk all day, and then they were confronted and said, "Well, didn't you all you guys say at the border that you had family here or somebody you knew and you were going to go?" "Oh, that was a lie." And they said, "All we knew is when we seen what America had, we want to sponge off American taxpayers." And what they're doing is they're panhandling and urging a support for Times Square shooters. And anybody that gets in trouble shoots the police officers. So they do that. I mean, if that doesn't burn your muffin, I don't know. You know, that's putting it nicely. How I felt about this. So there's a whole bunch of them that came here to sponge off taxpayers and get everything for free because it's a free. They
Muffin.
say it's a free country. Everything is free.
Well, LA Muffins, I'm getting my panties in a bunch over this because they want to take our Social Security that we've all worked
Hmm.
for. They want to take the funds from the VA. They just want to help collapse the system.
He says he makes $100 a day panhandling on the streets. That's a lot of money because people feel sorry for him, or they want to get rid of him. I don't know. They might give him all that money so they'll leave the city. But he panhandles. He says he can get up to, um, and um, he's been deported twice. He said the one this guy said his name is Marino. Um, well, let's see if I can find one of them, Leonel Marino. Um, he's an he advocates for other Venezuelans to rob and hurt and kill people.
Was he the guy that killed a person in Texas and then admitted to killing somebody in Georgia or
Yeah.
South Carolina?
So, but and the only other thing, boy, I didn't get very much, folks. Um, this one here, William, I meant to bring it up to you. This was at the Stars and Stripes. 4 charged in transporting suspected Iranian-made weapons on ship that U.S. Navy SEALs died intercepting. This was out of Richmond. 4 foreign nationals were arrested and charged Thursday with transporting suspected Iranian made weapons on a vessel intercepted by the U.S. naval forces in the Arabian Sea last month. 2 Navy SEALs died during the mission. The Stars and Stripes says that this is a story that should have been told. And why? Because so much of this is happening. Now, this happened in the Arabian Sea, where we're also seeing boats and helicopters, and I bring those up, and others that have gone down that people just don't know about. And they said the Army and the Navy Navy, Marines, Air Force, think that our soldiers we should be proud and honoring them. And you see them, bringing them, some of them back home on a plane with the coffin straight, but they don't necessarily do it for all of them. According to this article. So, um,
So the two SEALs were lost. I don't
mhm.
believe they've been recovered yet.
They
The
were part
captain
of
of the
the,
boat,
let's see,
the captain
uh,
of the pirate boat was running without lights. He had a cell phone tied to an individual that's part of the Iran Revolutionary Guard, and he had made 5 calls in the journey between the Strait of Hormuz and where they were detected in the Sea of Aden, and then where those 2 SEALs were lost. Those guys were having to board this boat in rough seas, and you don't board the boat way up front, right? Because that's where the skipper's looking and everybody's paying attention to. When you're running a
mhm.
boat through the water, you're always looking forward to see what you might hit or run into or some problem might be. So these guys are trying to board a boat towards the very back where you've got propellers spinning. It's a dangerous, dangerous game.
Yeah. And now,
And these guys, they were packing a warhead with them.
yeah. So, I wanted to move on. It's something you brought up that I guess just recently happened. The Houthis hit vital communications for Europe and Asia.
Yeah, it's the link between Europe and Asia. I've got some more information on it here. So they blew up 4 lines. They're 4 cables from AAE-1 or AAE-1, CCOM, EIG, and TGN communication systems, and they're strung between the Djibouti in Africa across the Strait of Mendab over to Saudi Arabia, right? And so the Houthis have gone over into Saudi Arabia and destroyed those cables, and it cuts off communication between Europe, Asia. It blanks out part of Africa. Also, most of our internet traffic does not travel. People think it all goes through satellites. What it does is it goes to cell towers, then it's transmitted down to fiber optics, and that's what these cables are. And when you do banking from Europe and Asia, it's going across these cables.
Well, everybody, you talk about, well, I'll just, remember the Ukraine, Russia, that big pipeline that got fractured? They just said they don't know what happened and they stopped the investigation here, I think last week, the middle of last week. So, no, they're not even going to look into it anymore.
Because these cables come up onto the land, and the Houthis went to where it was on land, and they don't have the ability to go deep and blow them up.
Right.
They blew them up where they enter onto the land.
Yeah. So that's what that's what these terrorists do. And when, that was over there, or that was, what you said, Africa. And I mean, look at what just happened with AT&T. They had a simple mistake, and AT&T, I think Verizon and Cricket all did without. And I thought it was a solar flare, but they said yes, that was part of it. A lot of people were affected by the solar flare, but the AT&T screwed up. So they're saying if you have AT&T services, you get a discount for that day. Uh, but anyway, go ahead, William, on this Houthis. Unless we're going to move on.
We can move on.
Okay, what's next?
So we've talked about Ronna McDaniels and the RNC. So here's some
Wait a minute, we got a
stuff.
question. How the hell did they do that? Um, how did they cut it? Do you have any info on that?
It would have been I'm sure they would have used explosives. They did. If okay, let's say Evil William is going to cut those lines,
No, just blow them
I
up.
would set them up with explosives on a timer, and so I could be out of the area and wouldn't get hurt when when those lines went. And
They were probably back to Houthi
same.
land by the time it blew up. So, but we're smart enough now that yeah. If you guys watch detective shows, when things get blown up, it's always there's something that's a signature in the way they put these explosives together. So, okay, so now we can move on. No other. We don't have no other questions.
So we go back to Taiwan again. Elon Musk's having a problem with Taiwan. So in Taiwan, we do a whole bunch of stuff with Taiwan. Taiwan builds 90% of the high-end chips we use at the Defense Department. Taiwan sorts 70% of all the containers that move through the South China Sea. I don't know if people realize that. There's a port in Taiwan. It's one of the biggest ports in the world as far as moving containers in and out. Containers come from all parts of the world, and then they got to be sorted onto different ships going to the part of the world they want to get these containers to. So that's going on in Taiwan. And at the same time, you've got fisheries in Taiwan. Well, we have another problem in Taiwan. So there's this contractual agreement the United States government has with Elon Musk for what's called Starshield. Okay, and what Starshield is a military version of a contracted DoD use of Starlink. So Starlink is Elon Musk's internet for people that have no other way of getting a decent internet service. Well, Elon hasn't been allowing Taiwan to be able to use Starlink, and by extension, our soldiers to use the contracted agreement with the DoD, our soldiers that are doing training and helping them learn how to use the weapons and teaching them how to do maintenance, the things that we do, the U.S. government, in just military to military aid, right? And we do that so that other nations that aren't ours have a relationship with our military. So if things go bad, we can reach out. We have other ways to reach out to countries than just through ambassadorships, because that can be cut off easily. And that way we can avoid wars if it's at all possible, right? Well, the problem for Elon is he's buying all these parts for the Tesla from China. Think about the Tesla walls, where you charge up all these small batteries, right? That are set up in arrays to run your house. It was before NMIH big cells came out, but the Tesla batteries, like they used to use in the Prius, people would take them literally out of the Prius, put them on their wall, and run their house. All right. So all these batteries are coming out, parts for Tesla's coming out, and also Tesla sells cars in China. And so there's this, he's caught between the U.S. government, right, and the Chinese government. And yeah, it's a problem.
Yeah.
So Starlink, I think, will be moving to Taiwan pretty soon, regardless of what happens to Tesla, because if you think about it, Elon's not going to want to jeopardize SpaceX and all the military contracts that SpaceX does towards 2014,
Mm-hmm.
just landed on the moon, was from SpaceX. So he could have all that in jeopardy over this ability for U.S. military individuals to have trusted internet.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing happened, in Ukraine. Remember, Elon gave Ukraine Starlink access so that Ukrainian people could continue to defend themselves, even though their internet was knocked out by Putin. And then he wanted to remove it after a while because there was lots of pressure put on him, of course, from, the usual actors, right? And so this contract was written up for DOD. Well, there's that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, let's talk about Ukraine. We just found out that we have a little bit of a problem in Ukraine with some military bases that were just found. Do you remember me talking about that?
Yeah.
So there's 12 CIA bases, military bases, that have just been divulged
Mm-hmm.
in Ukraine. They started back in 2013, so it was during Obama and Biden. This was about the same time Biden was having that prosecutor removed.
Mm-hmm.
And this is also, so Victoria Nuland, I think I'm just going to continue. So this was when Victoria Nuland was moved to the area.
Yeah.
And she was Deputy Secretary of State. Before that, under the Cheney, she was an ambassador to the Security Council of NATO. Then she became, under our National Security Committee, over all of Europe and Eurasia, so that's the Middle East and Europe. But as soon as she came over to Secretary of State, of course, this started happening, and they started putting these bases in Ukraine. And then the next year, in 2014, we had that breakout where the Russians all headed down to Crimea. And remember, these are all tied to extreme right-wing groups in Ukraine that were involved in taking over the government and overthrowing the government before that. That's why Russia got so upset and saying they were Nazis. Well, turns out, guess what? Yeah, they were Nazis. And we had 12 underground, hidden CIA military bases that were helping foment this mess. So we've gone from having not just a Russian big nation attacking a smaller nation, right, to having a superpower putting secret bases fomenting a war against a major nation into a smaller nation.
Well, you were saying that MI6 is a part of it?
Oh, yeah. And so, yeah, of course, MI6 was a part of it at the same time. That was part of what was said. So, yeah, Victoria Nuland, her education, she got a degree in Bachelor's of Arts in History. And this guy that was vice president picked her up as part of his security team, and his name was Dick Cheney. So you're starting to see where all this is going.
Well, yeah, and then I was telling you in 2013, I've seen pictures, and I got one that's got Dick Durbin in the picture, Adam Schiff, Schumer's been there, uh, a Mueller. Mueller was in a picture I seen that was all over there in 2013. So it did make a lot of sense. And then I even asked you about
This is where that
OSI.
whole Russia thing came from. Remember,
Yep,
we had a
that's where
spy
Russia
from,
Russia came from, folks. Is they were over
yeah,
there um,
and we
uh,
attacked
in
on
Ukraine.
Trump because they were trying to hide this monster they created over there, and were trying to operate it at the same time. They had a presidency that wouldn't tolerate it.
You know, I've even mentioned it before. Now you've got all those CIA bases. Now look at all of um, the labs that Putin closed down, and they were so old, they were just not in it. They couldn't save them. And then we move over there, we refurbish them, and we start our own labs over there. There's like, well, I'm going to go with 5. I know there's more than that, but
It was
then we
7.
were doing that, and now we have CIA bases over there. And then Zelensky, you know, I don't know if anybody knows, he put in that. There is political asylum in Ukraine. But not only that, but it makes you wonder why, or not makes you wonder. Now you kind of know why. They wanted that, the Democrats wanted that conversation between Zelensky and Trump. I think they were scared to death he would spill the beans on everything he had been doing because they were also buying into the pipeline there as um, investors and also on the board
This was just
or
before they shut down the pipeline with Russia,
mm-hmm.
and remember they had a short-term shutdown of the land pipeline. So Russia says, well, we'll just make a water pipeline, right?
That's why I got blown up.
Yeah, so there was Nord Stream that went
mm-hmm.
through Ukraine, and then they shut that down for a while, but they turned it back on because of the whole Crimea blowout, right?
Mm-hmm. That's the 2015. 2015,
Then after
16.
war started between Russia again and Ukraine, well, then they shut down Nord Stream 1, and so then Nord Stream 2 got blown up. Mm-hmm. But what we're seeing is this is everything you've seen against the early part of Trump's administration with respect to trying to have him run out of office because of a simple phone call, right? Mm-hmm. Trying to understand what's going on.
Yeah. I think this is beyond what he could have ever imagined. Because if the more I see of Ukraine, you know, and then a lot of the oligarchs were running a lot of this stuff over there too. And you know, right before Ukraine decided to just push into this war when it all happened, it's like, how come all the oligarchs were just like, they left? Hey, see you, buddy. And some of them were even connected to the Biden administration under some of these bad business practices. So they're even tied to the oligarchs of
Obama. He was just going to send blankets and stuff like that. But the truth is, what was he doing underground with the CIA?
That's right.
So they're hiding one thing from the public, doing something another way, right? It's just bad. And then they hand over the government to, guess what? A far right group, the Azov Battalion, and these are called ultra nationalists. They're not just ultra nationalists; they're ultra socialist nationalists. They want to control everybody else's lives from.
Those are the kids of their great grandfathers were the Nazi soldiers. I've done info on that before on my show. That these are actually some of the kids from would be their grandparents. They're in their 20s, so
they were their grandparents.
Grandparents were part of World War II when the Nazi soldiers fled and they went into Ukraine. and a lot of them stayed there. But it wasn't the big generals or anything like that. It was the soldiers, but they still supported Hitler, and they still supported uh, the socialist and
Well,
uh,
Soros, the word we can't say, the George S. word.
yeah.
Um, that's why he was there at the same time that we had people from the United States there.
Yeah.
Looking at the records that were being hidden.
Yeah. So I didn't want to get too deep on that, but the other thing going on, William, unless you got more to say on what's there in Ukraine.
I don't. Not right now, but I will have a lot more.
We got Wednesday. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll be back Wednesday, folks. But now get this. We left Afghanistan, folks. And now, according to an article that's coming out of the Middle East, and it was in Israel, and a lot of my sources over there were talking about it, and it's a resurgence for a training camp. And they said that now they had their heyday in the early 2000s when Joe Biden uh, pulled everybody out, and they were very, very happy. So since then, what they've been doing is getting all of the chiefs, I guess, William, I don't know what to call them, the leaders of different, they say, sectors of Afghanistan, Pakistan, even some over into the other countries that are part of Al Qaeda and the Taliban. And they brought them all to Afghanistan to give them the luxury of a leadership and sectors in Afghanistan that will be training camps. They said they have enough, that it's going to be a resurgent Al Qaeda training camps and Taliban, or they say a resurgent of Taliban training camps. So now that it's safe to do it, they say, and like I was telling William earlier, that Pakistan does it too. And so when I read down further into the article, it said in 2021 that Pakistan, a lot of theirs wanted better training because Afghanistan was getting millions and millions and billions of dollars from everybody that felt sorry for them. Now they actually have the equipment. They can start having Iran as a backer, which is scary. Um, and the guns they said, and the guns are coming from um, uh, some from Saudi of their uh, um, radical groups, but a lot of it's coming from Iran. Loads and loads of guns. So they have these, now it's going to be sectors with these Taliban, Al Qaeda leadership that's they say it'll be 12 to 20 training camps. And what they want to do is after they're trained, then they send them to America. So, all right, William, go ahead. We still got some minutes left.
And remember, the CIA was in Afghanistan for 10 years, giving the Mujahideen missiles and whatnot to fight against the Russians that were there. And the entire time, the CIA was having to transit through, of course, Pakistan. And at the same time, because the Mujahideen were fighting the Russians, the children, women, and religious leaders moved over to Pakistan near Peshawar. And while that 10-year war was going on, the religious leaders created what's called a madrasa and radicalized the children. And that's where this terrible government in Afghanistan comes from, is the children that were radicalized, even against the Pashtuns who were pushing out the Russians. And so the
Mm-hmm.
Pashtuns have lost twice. Once with uh, working with the CIA, and then once with their own children returning back into Afghanistan as the terrible government that they have there. And at the same time, now ISIS and Al Qaeda are being issued passports from Afghanistan so they can enter other countries around the world.
Oh, Jesus.
So when you see these people coming into South America, right, and coming across our border, how do you think they're getting there?
Yeah.
They're coming in with passport. They're coming in by air, and they're coming from Afghanistan.
Yep.
Now, at the same time, Pakistan is always caught between this. All the times that the United States was in Afghanistan, all that equipment that was brought in didn't come by air. It came by truck through Pakistan. And so this whole thing has been bad for Pakistan and the ISI. They've caught betwixt and between. And every time the United States pulls back, they lose.
Yeah.
So, when you have countries in the world, you've got the good guys, you've got the bad guys, and then you've got the people that are on the fence. Well, the reason they're on the fence is because they're never treated well by either side. That's Pakistan.
And welcome, Swifty. We're talking about Williams add a little bit more to it. Afghanistan adding training bases for the Taliban, more than likely ISIS too. How much do you want to bet a lot of like the Houthi are going to be trained there and some of these others, because these are radical, chop your head off trainings. So that's the whole thing about it. You got to look at how vicious Muslims are. I mean, it's not just they want to kill you. No, they want to torture and cut your head off. And they do it to other Muslims. Is the thing, William? And that's what gets me.
Right.
They do it to their own Muslim brotherhood. They call it.
If you're a female and caught out without, your male family member,
now the question,
like Iran next door, they'll kill you.
Okay.
Throw you off the train, broken and beaten because you had the audacity as a girl.
Well, if you stole, they would cut your hand off so you'd never steal again. Turkey did it too. That was just part of the punishment.
So that's part of Sharia law. And we have, right now, we have people agitating in the state of New York for Sharia law.
Mm-hmm.
Completely through
Dearborn,
the
Michigan,
States.
Too. He wants to do it. There's
and
another
they're
city.
Coming across the border right now in droves.
Now, we have a question. The Taliban, didn't they cause 9/11?
No, that was Al Qaeda. Al Qaeda came out of Saudi Arabia. When we went into Saudi Arabia to liberate Kuwait, United States came in with our military. So now you've got infidels in Saudi Arabia. And this is a very, very conservative country with solid laws. It's not a torturous country. It's just a very strict Muslim country. It's the country that has Mecca. It has Medina, all right, the big religious sites where every Muslim's expected to go to those sites one time in their life, all right? And to make it worse, in Saudi Arabia, you don't go anywhere downtown and shop if you're a female without being covered up and without a male member of your family. They'll beat you
or stone you.
Right.
That's what got me is my friend that's in Africa. He was telling me that if they don't cover, I mean, they have to wear total black. It don't matter if it's 150 outside, they still got to wear that black. I don't know what they call it.
The burqa.
Burqa, thank you. And even if they're walking and their ankle shows, Men will gather around them with sticks and rocks and beat them to death because the Arabs have many wives. So it's just a loss of one of the wives, and they just go find another one.
So anyway, when we went into Saudi Arabia with our military, guess what we brought in with us?
Mm-hmm.
Women.
Yep.
We brought in women working out on the flight line without a covering and without a male partner, a male family member. It was complete outrage. The outrage was so great that we had an entire block of apartments that our military people were living in where they were bombed while they were there. Shortly after that, Al-Qaeda was born, and of course, you know all about Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden. And that's what happened to our towers. It was a religious reaction to having infidels, and not just infidels, but infidels and their women on Saudi Arabian soil.
Mm-hmm.
And the leadership in Saudi Arabia had to make two choices: be invaded by Iraq or have the United States and a coalition come in and, number one, save Saudi Arabia, and number two, push Iraq and Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait.
And another thing that I always think of, I can't remember if it was the Taliban or Al Qaeda that did it, but I knew they were Muslims. That you remember Big John or whatever, that they gathered all them infidels up and they chopped all their heads off, and they wanted to show the United States, look at what we do.
Right.
And why didn't anybody? Everybody forgot about that. Everybody forgot, and now we're just letting them come into our country.
We had reporters being beheaded.
It's okay to bring them in now.
Yeah. We had contractors being beheaded. It was a mess. And then when we went into Iraq, we had more beheadings. And then they're not just beheaded, but hung from bridges. Or when we had Black Hawk Down happen, again, the warlords and their religious adherents were mutilating our military members' bodies and parading them through the streets.
Now,
this is brutal culture.
Now, I think what she's talking about, I think this got, I don't know, you might know more than I do. Are we still subsidizing the Muslim Brotherhood through Sharia banks? I think it used to be 2% of every loan in agreement with the banks. Now, I know the Sharia Brotherhood, they got busted up over a manifesto that was found in, I think, Arizona. And it busted out the big, I don't know, I can't remember the name of them, but it was called a type of Muslim Brotherhood. And they were starting to run some of them banks. You remember anything on that, William? This has been a long time ago.
Yeah, so they had private people running banks because the majority of the people in Muslim countries didn't have bank accounts that they could run through for doing business with the West. And people who had moved to the West had no way of sending money back to their families that were suffering in the Middle East. And so a group of individuals, like a mafia, would literally hand cash one to another to get money back to these families. And it was under a Sharia agreement. And Sharia, remember, is just the law of Muhammad, all right? So they got 2%. And after they started having more and more money move through them back and forth, right? Because if you're buying arms or doing something under the table, the money goes the other way. They started issuing money. So, yeah, they did. But now most of the money moves through the Western banking system. So, like Saudi Arabia, they're kind of another fence in their country, but on the
Mm-hmm.
other hand, they do business with the West. They use engineering from the West. They sell oil through OPEC to the West. And so they are, in fact, a Western trading partner as a government. At the same time, they have to be Sharia adherents, right, to the religion of their nation. And it's kind of a strange thing that happens. But that's why Saudi Arabia was about to, right, just about to sign a commercial agreement with Israel, because it was in their best interest to be able to use some of the Israeli high technology. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, Iran rejected that. They were upset because, you know, if you're Muslim, it has to be a theocracy or nothing at all, right?
And they always have to be, I mean,
and
they're
so
going to
on.
always have their foot right there, because they believe that 50% of the world is Muslim. So 50% of the world is theirs. So that, I mean, that's why
Right.
they've
And
got their foothold here. And even over, you know, they have the Muslims that butt right up against China. Um, uh, that's why they went and got those, what was it, monks?
the Uyghurs.
The Uyghurs, yes, they were Muslims. They can't have that, and
Well,
that's why
China
there's
had a
the
problem.
friction between the two.
China had a problem in that the Uyghurs were Islamic and they prayed 5 times a day. Now the Christians, they could quietly pray. The Christians could be
But
individuals
not
and
the
still be
Uyghurs.
Christian at home and
Mm-hmm.
not cause problems for the Communist Party. But the Muslims, they absolutely could not control because of Sharia law
That's
and the
it.
requirement to pray 5 times a day, bowing down on a carpet facing Mecca, right? And so then now we've got Uyghurs in, for all intents and purposes, death camps,
Mm-hmm.
right, in China.
Re-education camps. I think that's what
Yeah,
our
that's what they
FEMA
call it.
camps are going to be turned into, or re-education camps. I think that we're going to, I don't know. I want to know what happened to
That's
them
what Stalin.
coffins.
That's what Stalin had in Russia too, re-education camps, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you know, but really what they were was slave camps, so that the high leaders of the country could make money from it without having to take the money from their
Uh-huh.
population, while giving their population meager rations, if you will.
Yeah.
And they just did it until the people died. We called it the Gulag Archipelago. Was written by was Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Yeah, and we've got the same thing going on with China and the United States. We have companies, corporations, hedge funds, whatnot, going into China and doing business with them when they know they're doing exactly what Stalin did in the concentration camps, exactly what Hitler did in the concentration camps, and they don't care.
No. So, William, do you got anything else? Or are we
Oh yeah, sure. I've got all kinds of stuff. What time is it?
It's
Well, we'll just this one thing that popped up this weekend, and we'll do some more stuff.
Wednesday. I'm up to it tomorrow. If I'm up to it tomorrow, we'll jump in, but we'll definitely have a World War III report Wednesday.
Yeah, so we did the CIA bases. So we have an airman.
Oh yes, I forgot about that. Yes.
Remember that lady that went to the consulate in there in Georgia and set herself on fire back in December? Well, we had the same thing happen again. We had an airman. He was involved in a development of cyber, right? So he was a coder in the government from he's an officer or an airman, or commissioned officer, just an airman, or non-commissioned officer. We haven't figured that out yet. So he goes up to the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C., and in front of the Secret Service, douses himself with gasoline and sets himself on fire. Now, he records himself and sends it out to the internet on whichever platform he was using. I'll have more information on that. But beforehand, he was talking about genocide going on in Palestine. He was also talking about colonialism. He was talking about the same thing. I forget the name of the officer that was the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff that talked about white rage. He wanted to know about white rage in Congress in one of the hearings. Anyhow, so he's talking about this stuff. He's using terminology from the whole green climate agenda, and his protest is we have to free Palestine because of the genocide. Now, he didn't talk about the fact that they're holding U.S. citizens hostage, right? That Hamas is doing that. He didn't talk about the genocide that happened on October 8th against the Israelis. But Palestinians, he was programmed into that. I don't know if it was school, from home, or if he got it in the military, remember, because they had to be, is this the group they had walking around in high heels? I don't know. But so he dumps gas on himself, and he screams 3 or 4 times, free Palestine. Now he's an inferno at the same time. The next 2 things out of him were just screams of pain. Then there's just a very small statement of free Palestine, because obviously by now he's sucked flames into his lungs. He screams out in pain once more, collapses to the sidewalk. Now, the ATF are called because they're afraid that he had a bomb in his car. Turns out there was no bomb in his car, but there's still an investigation going on with that. We talked about, I didn't understand why the ATF was there. Well, that's the reason.
The bombs, yeah. I didn't think about that way. Yeah. ATF is called out for the bombs.
But there was nothing there. He just wanted to burn himself to death. Now, the next thing, he had one of those status symbols. You know, if you're a big money maker in the United States, maybe you want to drive a Bentley, maybe you want to drive a Cadillac, maybe an Escalade, something, a high-end vehicle, right? Well, if you're part of that whole green movement, climate, one of those type vehicles for you is the Toyota Prius. Now, we had one of the lovers that came out that got the charges going for Trump, right? He was driving one of those cars, a Prius. Well, now we've got this guy driving a Prius, one of these status symbols of this ideology. And, he was talking about colonialism, and colonialism comes from the Pan-African movement. The Pan-African movement, just like Black Lives Matter, is communist. So I'm not understanding why this guy's here. Now, his name's Aaron Bushnell. We'll be just finding more information out into the future, but I thought you guys should hear about that because, that's kind of important, and you guys would think that we weren't even paying attention to the news. And one more thing, the Federal Trade Commission is trying to stop a merger between Kroger and Albertsons, and we'll have a whole information packet on that coming out into the future too. So that's what I've got, Ellie.
Okay, well, like I said, we'll try for tomorrow. Let's see how tomorrow goes, but for sure, we got the World War III report. Was a very popular show on Wednesday, and we're just going to keep puttering along until I get further word. So subscribe and hit the like button, um, thumbs up, and be sure to ring the bell for notifications, um, and share with family and friends. And maybe next time you're at the bank, turn around and tell the person behind you about investigator news too, or tell a neighbor. Uh, I thank you, William, for all the info tonight. Thank you for being here. And we thank our viewers for watching. Uh, but I thank
Well,
William.
Thank you for letting me contribute, Ellie.
I think we're a fantastic duo. You know, Batman and Robin or something. You're dark. I don't know if I make a good Robin, but I don't even know
I'm
about
not sure.
Catwoman.
Did they have a Batwoman
We're
too?
a news duo.
I messed up.
We're a pretty good news duo. All right, folks. You guys have a wonderful Monday. I think that new Survivor show is on NBC tonight. Go, it's 7 o'clock. So go watch it. All right, folks. We will see everyone soon. And of course, thanks for watching. Good show. So I'm going to try to push for tomorrow. Yeah. That's very, very good.